The sound of glass hitting wood still rings in my head. A sharp, deliberate clink, the kind people make when they want attention, when they're about to say something important. But what followed wasn't a speech. It was an execution. Some kids, my dad said, swirling the amber in his whiskey glass, make you proud. Others just take up space. For half a second, no one moved. The laughter that had filled the dining room moments ago froze midair, the Christmas lights reflecting in stunned, uncertain faces. I sat there, his daughter the space taker, with my fork poised over a half-cut piece of turkey, my stomach tightening like it was trying to fold in on itself. The smell of roasted garlic and pine candles suddenly made me nauseous. My stepmother, Celine, had her hand over her mouth, pretending to be shocked, but her eyes were glinting. She was enjoying this. Dad didn't look at me when he said it. He just stared into his glass like he'd rehearsed the line all evening. I wanted to believe it was a joke, some bitter offhand comment that came out wrong. But I knew better. He didn't stumble over his words. He wanted them to land. "Dad," I said softly, my voice barely audible over the fire crackling in the background. "What's that supposed to mean?" He finally turned toward me, slowly, deliberately, with that detached half-smile he'd been perfecting ever since Celine came into his life. "It means," he said, "some people know how to contribute. Others drain everyone around them." The words sliced right through me. My mother's photo, framed on the mantel, still wearing that warm, forgiving smile, caught my eye. I felt her ghost watching this unfold, powerless to stop it. I pushed my chair back. "You don't get to talk to me like that." "Oh, relax," Celine interrupted, her voice dripping with false warmth. "He's just had a rough day, sweetheart. Don't make everything about you." My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her. "He just humiliated me in front of everyone, Celine." My brother, Ethan, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Come on, guys, it's Christmas." "Sit down," Dad snapped. And Ethan did. Of course he did. Because Ethan was the one who made him proud. Ethan, the golden boy with the perfect job, perfect house, and perfect wife who called Dad every week to remind him how lucky he was to have such a devoted son. I used to call too once. Used to show up on birthdays, bring home-baked gifts, help decorate the house when Celine couldn't be bothered. But slowly, my place in his world shrank until I was a visitor in a home that once smelled like safety. Tonight just made it official. I stood up. My knees trembled, but I forced my voice to steady. "I'm leaving." "Of course you are," Dad said, not even looking up this time. "Running away, your usual solution." Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a small splintering sound that felt permanent. As I grabbed my coat, I could hear Celine whisper something under her breath, and Ethan's uncomfortable shifting beside her. But I didn't stop. I walked out into the December cold, the air biting against my cheeks. My vision blurred from tears, but I kept going until I reached my car. When I finally started the engine, I looked back at the house through the windshield, the house I'd grown up in. Through the frosted windows I could see shadows moving inside, laughter returning, plates clinking again as if I'd never existed. He toasted after I left. I knew it. I felt it. That's how my dad operated, punishment with performance. But as I drove off, something in me shifted from pain to something darker. Because the thing about betrayal is, it doesn't end with silence. It festers. And I'd had enough of being the quiet one. The next morning my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from Ethan, unreadable apologies that all boiled down to, "Please don't make this a thing." But one message caught my attention. It was from Celine. "You overreacted last night. You know your father only wants the best for you. Maybe take some time to think about what you bring to this family before you lash out again." I stared at the screen, feeling the words crawl under my skin like insects. What I bring to this family? I'd spent years bringing myself, my time, my care, my energy into that house. And they'd used it like it was disposable. So I opened my laptop. There was something I'd been meaning to look into for a while. A suspicion I'd buried under guilt and denial. Last month, when I visited unexpectedly, I'd noticed something strange. My father's office door was half open, and I glimpsed a document on his desk, a property sale agreement with my mother's name still listed. It had been crossed out, replaced by Celine's in a different pen color. When I'd asked Dad about it, he said, "It's just a formality." I'm consolidating assets for tax reasons. But now that phrase, consolidating assets, replayed in my mind with new meaning. My mom's will had said that her half of the house would go to me. I was 19 then, too lost in grief to question the legal jargon. Dad handled it all. Said he'd take care of everything. I typed my mom's full name into the property registry site. The old deed popped up instantly, she and Dad listed as joint owners. Then I clicked the updated record. Owner, David Montgomery. Secondary owner, Celine Montgomery. My name wasn't there. Not even a mention. A hot rush of blood filled my head. I had proof not just of emotional betrayal but theft. I slammed my laptop shut and pressed my palms against my face, trying to breathe. He'd taken everything, her house, her memory, her legacy, and handed it to someone who smirked at me across the dinner table like I was an inconvenience. For years, I'd told myself that maybe Dad was just trying to move on, that he deserved happiness after losing Mom. But this wasn't healing. It was erasure. And now he wanted to erase me too. I sat there for a long time, trembling with the kind of fury that doesn't fade, it evolves. Then I whispered it out loud for the first time. He's going to regret that toast. Later that night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I saw his glass raised, his voice calm and cruel. So I got up, turned on the desk lamp and opened my mom's old photo album. The one I kept hidden in the closet. Between the pages I found something I'd forgotten existed. A folded letter with her handwriting. It was dated 2 months before she died. If anything ever happens to me, make sure you read this carefully. There are things you deserve to know. Things I couldn't say while he was in the room. My heart stopped. The words blurred as I read the rest, and a chill swept through me that had nothing to do with the cold. Because my mother had left secrets behind. About my father, about what she'd suspected before she died. And as I reached the last line my whole world tilted. Trust your instincts, sweetheart. The truth always hides where love once did. I didn't sleep that night. The letter lay open on my desk like a wound I couldn't close. My mother's handwriting, elegant, looping, so her, stared back at me under the soft yellow light. She'd written it with love but also with fear. If anything ever happens to me, make sure you read this carefully. There are things you deserve to know. Things I couldn't say while he was in the room. I read it again and again until the words blurred into one another. She never said who she meant by he, but I didn't need her to. There was only one man she'd have been afraid of. By sunrise my hands were shaking. I hadn't cried, not yet. The tears were trapped behind something heavier. Something that felt like realization settling deep in my bones. She'd known. She'd known. I opened the second page, the one I'd missed at first. If your father tells you I wanted to change the will, don't believe him. I left the house and the land it's on for you. It's all in the safe in his office. You'll need the small gold key from my jewelry box. My breath caught. The jewelry box. It was still in the house, in my old bedroom if Celine hadn't thrown it out. The thought of going back there made my stomach twist, but I couldn't let that stop me. I grabbed my coat, slid the letter into my pocket, and drove through the frost-tipped streets like someone running from a fire. By the time I parked in front of Dad's house, my hands were clammy against the steering wheel. The Christmas lights were still up. Red, gold, and warm. Mocking me with the illusion of family. For a moment I sat there watching the windows glow, and considered turning back. But then I saw Celine's car wasn't in the driveway. Perfect. I stepped out quietly, my boots crunching against the icy gravel. The key under the doormat still worked. She hadn't changed it. The house smelled the same. Coffee, pine, and faint perfume. The living room was spotless, too spotless. Like someone was pretending to live a perfect life inside it. My old bedroom was at the end of the hall. The door creaked when I pushed it open. It looked smaller now, stripped of anything that had ever felt like me. The walls were bare, the desk gone. But on the dresser, half hidden behind a vase of artificial flowers, was the box. The same one my mother used to keep her rings in. Delicate gold with a rose carved into the lid. I reached for it, my heart racing. Inside, everything was just as I remembered. The pearl earrings she wore on her anniversary, the silver chain Dad once gave her, and in the corner a tiny gold key. I held it up, trembling. That's when I heard the floorboard creak behind me. Looking for something? His voice. I froze, my fingers tightening around the key. Dad stood in the doorway, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his face unreadable. "Your stepmother said she saw your car outside," he said. "You decided to just let yourself in?" "I needed to get something," I said quietly. He noticed the box and something shifted in his expression. A flicker of recognition. "That belonged to your mother. You shouldn't be. She left me a letter," I cut in. His face went still. Completely still. "A letter?" I nodded slowly. "She said not to believe you if you told me she changed her will." He laughed once sharply. "Oh, for God's sake. You think your mother's ghost wrote you a conspiracy theory? She was ill, sweetheart. Confused." I shook my head. "She wasn't confused, Dad. She was scared." That one word, scared, made him flinch, just slightly. Enough for me to see it. "Watch yourself," he said, his tone dropping an octave. "You're starting to sound paranoid." "I'm not paranoid." I held up the key. "She told me where to find the truth." For a moment we stood there, silence thick as cement, staring each other down. Then he smiled. Not kindly, not reassuringly, just tiredly. "Put the key down, Anna." He used my full name. He only ever did that when he wanted to remind me I was the child, and he was the authority. But that power had already cracked the night he raised that glass and declared me worthless. "No," I said. Something cold flickered across his eyes, something that almost looked like fear but turned quickly to fury. "You don't understand what you're doing." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "You forged documents. You erased her will. You stole her half of the house and put it in Celine's name." He took a step forward, voice low. "Stop talking before you say something you can't take back." "Why?" "Because it's true. Because you have no idea what your mother did." That stopped me. "What are you talking about?" He exhaled, running a hand over his face. "She wasn't some saint, Anna. She made mistakes. Big ones. I was trying to protect this family from her recklessness." My heart pounded. "Liar." He looked up then, and for the first time I saw something flicker, guilt maybe, or exhaustion. "She was having an affair," he said flatly. "Before she got sick." "You think I didn't know?" The room spun. I shook my head, backing away. No, that's not true." He shrugged. "Believe what you want. But she wasn't the woman you think she was. And I'm done apologizing for cleaning up her mess." I stared at him, my breath shaking. "You're lying because you know what's coming. You know what's in that safe." He took another step closer. "Give me the key, Anna." I held it tighter. "Over my dead body." And then, to my shock, he smiled again, soft, almost pitying. "You sound just like her." Before I could react, he turned and walked out, calm and controlled, like the conversation had meant nothing. The door shut behind him, and I heard the slow creak of his footsteps descending toward the office downstairs. He was going to move the documents. Destroy them. I had minutes. I shoved the box back onto the dresser and ran down the hallway, gripping the key in my fist. The office door was already open. The fire was still warm in the fireplace, casting shadows across the bookshelves. Dad was kneeling near the safe, his back to me. "Stop," I said. He turned, startled, as I lunged forward. For a brief, terrifying moment we were both there, me clutching the key, him reaching for my wrist. "Anna, you don't want to do this," he said, voice low. "You don't know what you're playing with. Then tell me the truth." His jaw tightened. "The truth will ruin everything." "Then maybe it should." For a second, neither of us moved. Then, in one swift motion, I slipped the key into the safe before he could stop me. He grabbed my arm, but it was too late. The lock clicked open. I yanked the door wide and froze. Inside wasn't just paperwork. There were photos, letters, a flash drive, a small leather notebook with my mother's handwriting all over it. Dad's voice was almost a whisper. "Don't." But I did. I picked up the notebook and flipped to the first page. My mother's words stared back at me. "If you're reading this, it means he's still lying." The pages trembled in my hands as I read. The ink faded but legible. Her handwriting looping in soft curves, steady even as the words screamed fear. "If you're reading this, it means he's still lying." I looked up at my father. He stood perfectly still, the firelight flickering across his face, calm but not composed. His eyes were locked on the notebook, not me. "What is this?" I demanded. What did you do to her? He exhaled long and slow. You really want to open that door? I didn't answer. I flipped the page instead. He said it was business, that it wasn't personal. But when you sign something under threat, it's not business, it's survival. He's changing everything behind my back. I don't know if he means to hurt me, or if it's just greed wearing his face. My breath hitched. You threatened her? Dad's tone hardened. I didn't. She was sick, Anna. She didn't understand what was happening. I slammed the notebook onto the desk. Stop saying that. Stop hiding behind her illness. The silence that followed was like static, thick, humming, painful. The fire popped once, scattering sparks across the hearth. Then he spoke, voice low and deliberate. You think you want the truth, but you don't. Because if you did, you'd hate her too. I glared at him. You've already made sure I hate you. He smiled faintly, that same cruel, quiet smile from the dinner table. Then you'll fit right in. She hated me before she died. He turned to leave. Wait, I said. If you're so sure she was lying, why did you hide this notebook? He didn't answer. He just paused at the door, jaw tightening, and then disappeared into the hallway. I heard his footsteps fade upstairs. That's when I realized he wasn't going to destroy the truth. Not yet. He thought I wouldn't have the guts to act. He still saw me as the child who took up space. He had no idea who I'd become in the silence he created. I sat by the fire until the embers died, reading every line of that notebook. My mother had chronicled everything. Dates, meetings, her suspicions, the financial transfers she'd secretly tracked. Each page was a confession written by a woman trying to hold her world together while it cracked beneath her. She wrote about documents she wasn't supposed to see, bank statements under different names, transactions labeled as consulting fees that led to offshore accounts. She'd pieced it together. My father had been funneling money out of their joint holdings for years, preparing to shift ownership of everything before her illness worsened. He said it was to protect the assets, but I know what he's doing. He's erasing me from my own life. And then, at the bottom of the page, if he succeeds, our daughter loses everything, the house, the business, her inheritance. He'll make it look clean. He's good at that. I felt the weight of every word press into my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. He had stolen from her. From me. But one detail in the notebook stopped me cold. Celine is helping him. She knows. There's a file with her signature. If you ever need proof, look for the email chain labeled Ashcroft. He doesn't know I saw it. Ashcroft. I pulled the flash drive from the safe. It was old metallic silver with a scuffed surface, no label. My hands were shaking as I plugged it into my laptop. A single folder popped up. Ashcroft. Inside were PDF files, email screenshots, and digital signatures. I opened the first one. It was an email from Dad to Celine, dated 3 months before my mother's death. She's agreed to the trust transfer. Once she's on more medication, she won't question it. Keep the notary on standby. My stomach turned. He'd planned it all. Manipulating my mother's fragile state to get her to sign documents she didn't understand. Every line, every message, every attachment screamed premeditation. By the time I finished, my hands were numb. He hadn't just betrayed her. He'd orchestrated it. Morning light crept through the window, pale and cold. I hadn't slept. My mind was spinning through every memory. Every moment I'd excused his cruelty as grief. Every time I told myself he just didn't know how to love anymore. Now I knew the truth. It wasn't grief. It was greed. I needed to do something. But revenge wasn't the word for it. Justice was. I copied every file onto a secure drive and sent the originals to a cloud account I'd set up years ago for freelance work. I renamed the folder Mother's Truth. Then I packed the notebook into my bag. I wasn't going to confront him alone this time. I needed someone who couldn't be swayed by his charm or his money. There was only one person who fit that description, Ethan. Even though we hadn't been close in years, I knew he had a conscience buried somewhere under Dad's approval. When I called him, he answered on the second ring, voice groggy. Anna? It's 7 a.m. What the hell? Meet me at the lake, I said. Mom's spot. He paused. What's going on? I found her letter. And something else. Anna. Please. I whispered. Just come. He hesitated, then sighed. Fine. 30 minutes. The lake was half frozen when I got there, a thin layer of ice glinting under the winter sun. The old bench where Mom used to sit was still there, half buried under snow. Ethan's car pulled up a few minutes later. He stepped out, adjusting his jacket, frowning when he saw me. All right, he said, his breath fogging the air. What's this about? I handed him the notebook. Read. He scanned a few lines, then looked up. Is this? Her handwriting. Her words. She was documenting everything. Dad stole from her, Ethan. He made her sign things she didn't understand. And Celine helped. He shook his head. No, that's not possible. Dad wouldn't. He did. I have the emails. The signatures. He planned to transfer everything before she died. He flipped through more pages, his eyes widening, his hands tightening around the notebook. Jesus Christ. Now you see why he called me useless, I said quietly. Because the moment I stopped being silent, I became dangerous. He looked out at the frozen water, jaw clenched. If this is true, it is true. He met my eyes, and for the first time in years I saw something like belief. Like the boy who used to protect me on the playground when kids teased me about Mom's chemo scarf. What do you want to do? He asked. I opened my laptop and showed him the flash drive contents. We take this to the police. Or a lawyer. Or both. He hesitated. You know he'll destroy us, right? His reputation. His connections. I don't care, I said. He destroyed her first. He didn't argue. But as we stood there, something in his expression shifted. Not doubt exactly, but caution. Let me handle the lawyer, he said. If he finds out you're digging around, he'll lose it. You know how he gets. I studied him carefully. You're not going to tell him, are you? He shook his head. Of course not. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But when he hugged me before leaving, I caught a glimpse of his face, tight, conflicted, pale. And in that moment, deep down, I knew. My brother was going to betray me too. 2 days. That's how long it took for the silence to turn into something heavier. A warning. I'd sent Ethan everything. The notebook scans, the emails, the flash drive copies. I told him I'd meet him at the lawyer's office Thursday morning. But by Wednesday night, he still hadn't confirmed. I tried calling, no answer. Texting, nothing. And then at 9:37 p.m., I got a message from Celine. You should stop before you embarrass yourself further. Your brother's with your father right now, explaining everything. It's over, Anna. Let it go. The words blurred as I read them. The cold that followed wasn't just shock. It was something else. Something sharp and steady. A kind of grief I'd felt before. Back when Dad toasted my absence over dinner. Ethan had betrayed me. Not out of malice but cowardice, the kind of cowardice my father bred in him since we were kids. The golden boy never crossed the line that fed him. I stared at Celine's message for a long time, then typed back 2 words. Not yet. Then I powered off my phone. The next morning I drove to the old house. I didn't knock. I didn't plan. I just walked in, steady and silent, like someone who'd already accepted what had to happen. Dad was in the living room, leaning back in his chair, coffee in hand, like it was just another calm morning. Celine sat beside him, legs crossed, looking smug. Ethan was standing near the fireplace, pale and anxious. Morning, sweetheart, Dad said, his voice infuriatingly even. We were just talking about you. I glanced at Ethan. He couldn't meet my eyes. Celine smirked. You've caused quite a stir. Accusing your father of theft, forgery, murder practically. You should be ashamed. I didn't speak. I walked straight to the table and placed my bag down. Everything I have is in here, I said. Every document, every email, every word she wrote. You can destroy it if you want. But I've already sent copies to 3 people outside this house. Dad's smile faltered. Don't play games, Anna. This isn't a game, I said quietly. It's the truth. I turned to Ethan. Did you tell them? He swallowed hard. I thought, I just wanted to warn him. To give him a chance to explain. Explain. My voice cracked. He stole from her, Ethan. He made her sign papers while she was sick. She knew. She wrote it all down. And you still ran to him. Anna, he started. You don't understand how dangerous this could get. I understand perfectly, I said. He's dangerous. That's why Mom was terrified. Celine scoffed. You're delusional. You've always been dramatic, haven't you? Always the victim. I turned to her slowly. You helped him. You signed those transfers. Her lips parted just slightly. A flicker of surprise broke through her practiced calm. Don't bother denying it, I said. Your name's all over the files. You weren't just a bystander, Celine. You were his accomplice. Dad stood then, setting his cup down with a soft clink. Enough. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It was sharp, commanding, the tone that used to make me freeze as a kid. But I wasn't that girl anymore. You've embarrassed this family enough, he said. You think anyone's going to believe a bitter, jobless daughter over me? You think this little tantrum will undo what's already been done? I took a step closer, staring him down. You're right. No one used to believe me. But that was before I made a call to someone who actually can do something. He frowned. What call? And right on cue the knock came at the door. Ethan turned first. Celine's smirk vanished. Dad didn't move. I did. I opened the door, and a tall woman in a gray coat stepped in, flashing her ID. Detective Marla Hayes, Financial Crimes Division, she said. We received some rather compelling evidence last night. I caught Ethan's eyes widen. He hadn't expected that. Dad's composure cracked just enough for me to see the rage underneath. You went to the police? I didn't answer. The detective did it for me. We have records of multiple forged signatures, manipulated asset transfers, and communications suggesting coercion of a terminally ill spouse. We'll need you all to come with us for questioning. Celine stood abruptly. This is absurd. We're not. Sit down, ma'am, Hayes said sharply. We can do this here or at the station. Dad's jaw clenched. This is a mistake. I'm not saying another word without my lawyer. Good, the detective replied. You'll need one. I should have felt satisfaction, relief, vindication. But as I watched him, my father, stand there with fury burning behind his eyes, all I felt was exhaustion. Years of holding on to love that had already rotted. Ethan turned to me, whispering, You really did it. I didn't do it, I said softly. Mom did. I just finished what she started. Hours later, after they were escorted out for questioning, the house felt eerily quiet, empty in a way that didn't hurt anymore. I stood by the window, looking out at the gray winter sky. Everything was still. Ethan came back inside, rubbing his temples. They're taking him downtown. Celine too. Good, I said. He hesitated, then looked at me. I'm sorry. I should have believed you sooner. You shouldn't have needed proof to believe your sister. He flinched, then nodded. You're right. Silence stretched between us. Awkward but not hostile. What happens now? He asked. I looked around the house, the photos, the walls, the echoes of who we used to be. He'll face charges. Maybe prison. Maybe not. But even if he walks free, he's lost everything that mattered to him. Reputation. Control. The illusion of being the good guy. Ethan sighed. And you? I smiled faintly. I finally stopped taking up space. That night I went back to my apartment. The city lights blinked faintly through my window as I unpacked my bag. The notebook, now worn and creased, sat beside my laptop. I opened the last page. One I hadn't noticed before, folded tightly near the spine. If he ever turns our love into a weapon, remember. The truth is stronger than his voice. You'll know what to do. I did. I opened my laptop, clicked the upload button, and attached the files, every document, every email, every confession. Then I drafted a short statement. My father, David Montgomery, used my mother's illness to steal her estate and silence her. Here's the proof. I hit publish. Within an hour it was everywhere, shared, reposted, analyzed. By morning his name was trending alongside words like fraud and forgery. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was reclamation. When he'd raised that glass and said, Some kids make you proud. Others just take up space. He thought he was shaming me. But pride is temporary. Truth isn't. And now, for the first time in years, I felt my mother's presence not as a ghost, but as quiet strength in my chest. I whispered into the night. We did it, Mom.